Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Neo Marketing Podcast. Today we're going to talk about taking your personal emotions out of crisis communication. Welcome to the weekly Neo Marketing Podcast, featuring one half of the Golden Group C-Suite, Kyle Golding, and Prince Pritchard, APR PRSA Fellow. Hey Pritch, how are you today?
Doing great, Kyle.
I have a interesting scenario that happened recently, and I'm going to get your input on it. I think it'll be valuable for people to hear your take on this as well. One of our clients, our nonprofit client actually, had a little bit of a crisis situation. Some people had put some things on the internet that weren't exactly true. And we had to jump right into crisis management mode and get those things corrected, taken off the internet. Right. The great thing is the truth is your best weapon in these scenarios, right?
Absolutely.
There's nothing better than being able to just rebut with the truth. But it was a little bit stressful. It was one of our nonprofit clients who do really good work for people who really need it. And I personally was a little bit agitated with seeing people online talking about it who had no idea about the situation. They were just putting their 2 cents in, like people do on social media.
Demonstrated ignorance.
Exactly. And it rains a gamut of support through really, really negative information. So my question for you, what I want you to tell our audience is, why is it extremely necessary and important for us as professionals to be able to control our emotions and focus on the job at hand when it comes to crisis management in particular?
Well, the first thing is, I tell my students this all the time, regardless of whether it's crisis communication or not, in this business, you have to have skin like a rhino. You can't take it personally. And so I think that's step one of taking emotion out. I'll talk about that again in a little bit. It's essential to take your emotion out of your response and the way you deal with the crisis, because you're going to miss something. You think about it, if you're driving and you get mad at the other driver, or you get distracted with the radio and you get mad about that, then your driving goes to heck in a handbasket.
That's true.
So it's really critical. Now, if there are victims, empathy certainly is an important product of that, and empathy without emotion or some level of emotion, it can be seen and is worse than having no empathy at all. So,
but it still has to be measured, right?
Absolutely.
Because you can't sensationalize that aspect either. It has to be.
You don't want to sensationalize it. There are plenty of folks out there that will do that for you. But in order for empathy to be effective and it's appropriate, then there needs to be a little level of emotion in that. But as for handling the crisis, when you get emotional, you forget about stuff, you do the wrong thing, you make decisions that are not based on fact, but are based on that emotion, and it just takes you down a path you don't want to go as a crisis communicator.
Which is one of the essential reasons that every business and organization, nonprofits, etc., either A, need to have a dedicated individual who's trained in crisis management, or have working with someone like us who can come in and be non-emotional and be a little bit removed from the situation and just simply handle business the way business needs to get done, right?
Absolutely. And the key to that is compartmentalization. You really have to be the king or queen of compartmentalization to take the emotion out of it. Easier said than done, but you take that, and you can get emotional about it after the fact, but during the course of the crisis, you should put it in a little shoebox, put it up on the top of the closet, and leave it there until it's time for you to come back and, kind of sort your life back together again. There's nothing wrong with being emotional, especially in your case with the client in the moment, you eschewed emotion. Afterwards, you told me about that. And they're doing great work. So you take offense to people slamming them with rumor.
Right. And so that's a great tip, is sort of compartmentalization is a great way to work the process. What are some other practical tips people can take if they're facing a crisis situation about how to best handle it and take some of the emotional baggage out of it?
Yeah, it is really hard to do. With a lot of practice, it becomes a lot easier, just like everything else. I think one of the other tips is, if you feel yourself getting emotional about things, take a break.
Sure.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, yeah, the crisis seems immediate and you have to do some things right away, but it's not like you can't take a break.
30 seconds is not going to kill anything, right?
Take a minute, take a couple minutes, go out in the hall, deep breaths, take a drink of water, pace, if you will, but then come back and put your put your visor, your green eye shade on, and go back to work.
This is another reason too, right, to have your crisis protocols in place beforehand and do training and conversations about these things way before they happen, so that people can focus on business aspect, right, and take the emotion out.
Absolutely. And again, what you said about practice and what you said about the protocol, if you know what you're doing, it takes a lot of the fear out of it, and that's at the root of it, some of the emotion.
Sure.
But if you know what you're doing and people around you know what you're doing, or at least know what you're trying to do, they can be helpful as well. And there's a support system out there too. There are professionals that you know in your local PRSA chapter or other organizations. You can reach out to
the university even?
The university, absolutely.
Right.
We teach a crisis communications class, so we have some expertise. Have a conversation with somebody. Hey, I'm really getting wrapped up in this thing. Talk me off the ledge.
Because ultimately, right, we want to diffuse the situation. We don't want to make it worse by getting angry or emotional and just throwing opinion out. We want to use those facts that we have in order to combat the situation. But we don't want to make it worse.
Nope.
And the best crisis management, right, is the crisis management where the crisis never actually happens.
That's the best crisis
and no
management.
one sees it happening or even beginning, right? It just could have happened. It's avoided because some things weren't factually correct, and you put yourself back on the right path, right?
Absolutely. It's absolutely critical.
There it is, folks. Tips from the master himself on crisis communication and public relations in situations that might be pretty stressful, but your professional training and using some folks, even some third party or outside folks, to kind of keep you nice and calm will make those situations work better in the long run. So until next week, good luck.
Ciao.